Good afternoon. Welcome to the second night of Virtual College Week. Thank you so much for joining us. This afternoon we are focusing on you, the student, and we are excited to learn everything you need to get ready for college, apply for a university in Florida, and pay for school. My name is Nashla Daware. I will be facilitating today's webinar. Now, Virtual College Week would not be possible without our sponsors. We have Kaltura, Cooter, ACT, and the Florida Virtual Campus. Thank you. They have really made this event possible for you. Now, before we get started, I want to go over a few items with you. After the presentations are done, we are going to conduct a question and answer session live. So if you have any questions for our speakers this afternoon, you can type them in the question box, and we will answer them at the end of the session, so stay tuned. Closed captioning for this event is provided as well. And tonight's session is being recorded and will be posted on our website. Our website is floridashines.org. Finally, we are live on Twitter if you'd like to interact with us on social media. So share your comments, tell your friends, and connect with us at FL Shine. I'm going to go ahead and get us started with the session. Our first speaker of the evening is Liz Basicolo. She's here to tell us about how to be successful and easily transition to college and life after high school. Liz works in the Student Services Division in the Admissions Department at the State College of Florida, Manatee, Sarasota. She is responsible for North Sarasota and Manatee County high school recruitment. As a new student specialist, Liz facilitates the transition of new students into the college community. Liz, thank you for taking the time today to share your tips and your expertise. Welcome.
Thank you, Nashla, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again so much for being here and participating in our College 101 session. I'm going to talk about how to prepare for college and high school, including earning college credit, what support is offered to you in college, and the types of colleges and degrees they offer. So preparing for college and high school. The biggest thing I can tell you is research, research, research. Go to the college website. Know the admissions requirements. So is there a certain GPA that you need to get admissions into that college? Is there a certain score on the ACT or the SAT? Does a school prefer one of those tests over the other? Look at, is your major offered, what you'd like to study? Are there sports that you're interested in or clubs offered at that school that you'd like to participate? And one of my biggest advice that I could give you is to keep a notebook or even a Word document with all the information that you find when you're researching so you can keep it all in one place. College websites contain a lot of information, and sometimes you can get lost or know that you read something somewhere but can't find it again. So writing it down, and if you keep a Word document, even copying the hyperlinks to where the information was found can come in handy in the future. And then visit the campus. It could be very different in person than what you see online. You could do virtual tours, but it's great to go and actually visit it in person. This will help decide if it is the right fit for you. So visit again once you've been accepted and before you make your decision to make sure that, again, it's the best fit for you because you are going to be there for a few years. And remember that just because it's the best fit for maybe a friend of yours doesn't mean it's the best fit for you. And then make sure you apply to the colleges that you're interested in after you've done your research. Complete the FAFSA. It's now available October 1st, and you apply for any scholarships that you can find. And then another big one, don't get senioritis. So take challenging courses like honors, AP, ACE, IB, dual enrollment, and continue to be involved, whether it's volunteering, clubs, sports, working a job after school. And then I always like to say to have a plan B. So don't put all your eggs in one basket, like they like to say. Have a plan in case you don't get into your top school or your first choice, whether that is another school that you have applied to that may be your second choice, or maybe think about starting at a state or community college like State College of Florida and then transferring on. So College is very different from high school. You have more freedom and choices when it comes to scheduling and the classes that you'd like to take. So to prepare some more for college and high school, you want to make sure that you are still getting those choices when you're making your schedule your junior and senior year. I also like to say you're the driver of your education in college because you are in charge of everything. You get to say what days you want to come to the college campus, what classes you'd like to take, if you'd like to take the frequency of those, whether it's 3 days a week or 1 day a week. So a great way that you could prepare for this is time management because that is going to be your best friend in college. So create your own schedule. Start preparing by managing your time in high school and creating schedules for you to follow. So in college, again, you create your own schedule, so you may only come to school 2 days a week and take all of your classes on those days. But remember, not as much time is spent in the classroom in college, which means you are spending, time outside of the classroom. So you need to make sure that you're putting in your schedule the time that you're going to use to be reading, doing your homework, studying for those courses outside of the actual classroom time with the professor. And then another big difference of college from high school is to seek out help and support if you need it. Since you're the driver of your education in college, you also have to seek out help and support if you need it. So professors may not always tell you, I see your grades are slipping, or I noticed you didn't quite understand this concept like your teachers may have done for you in high school. So make sure that you check your college campus that you will be attending or you're interested in to see what support services that they offer you, and don't be hesitant to seek out help. So you could start that in high school, making sure if you're not understanding something, you go and let your professor know so that you're prepared once you go into college. And another great advice I can give is if you are looking at taking dual enrollment classes, a lot of dual enrollment classes are offered on the high school campuses, but if you can take one on a college campus, that would be great because this will help you get a feel for the college life. So support to help you succeed. Colleges offer many support services to their students to help them be successful. So these here are the names of the support services here at SCF at our campuses. But you should, when you're doing your research in your colleges, look at the ones you're applying to or will be attending and see what services that they offer to their students. So here we have the Career Resource Center. They can help you with choosing a career, so you can take tests to align your interests with possible career paths that you can go on, and we have a career advisor that will sit with you and go over all of your test results and help you pick a career. They will also help you here find internships and jobs both on campus and off campus. And they also help with resume writing, which is a big thing that you will need to do if you haven't done one in high school yet or in college, and then once you're preparing to graduate college and going into the workforce. Then another support service that we offer here at the State College of Florida is the Academic Resource Center. And this is great because it's tutoring, help with homework, studying, writing papers. We have study rooms and we have tutors who are available, and you can go in and do your homework, and if you're getting through, you get to maybe that math problem you're not so sure how to answer, you just raise your hand and someone comes over and can help you work through it. And we also have study rooms available where you can go with your friends and maybe study for an upcoming midterm or final or test that you have. And we also have models for our health science majors where they can see, different parts of the body that they can look at the models there at the Academic Resource Center. And another support service we offer is our Disability Resource Center, and this can help students who may have disabilities or receive accommodations and have maybe an IEP in high school. They'll be able to help you in college. Now, earn college credit while still in high school. So you want to check, you could take AP, IB, ACE classes. Those can help you earn college credit, but you want to make sure you check to see what kind of credit you'll receive for those classes. So again, this should be part of your research when you're doing all your research, looking into the different colleges you'd like to apply to. Many colleges will have this available on their website. So at our SCF website, it's under our academic catalog, and you can check and see, if I get this certain score on an AP test, what college credit will this school give me? So it's great to look into that if you are taking those types of classes, AP, IB, or ACE, or if you are thinking of taking them your senior year. And then dual enrollment classes help you earn credit towards your high school diploma as well as college credit at the same time. So remember, though, that these are college courses, which will show on your college transcript. So you want to start these classes even if they are classes that are taught on the high school campus and you're not coming to the college campus. These are still getting you college credit, and it will be on your college record. So it's the start of it. And you want to make sure you look as well. Most colleges will take your dual enrollment credits, but you can also look at that on their website. And this process for dual enrollment or any of the AP, IB, or ACE classes will start with your high school guidance counselor. So now types of colleges. So there's a few different types of colleges if you weren't aware. So we have here in Florida the Florida College System, and the college system, any of the 28 colleges offer certificates, associate's degrees, and they also offer some bachelor's degrees. And they have the 2+2 route, which we'll talk about in a second. But then we also have the State University System of Florida, and they offer bachelor's degrees and advanced degrees, such as master's or doctorate degrees. And there's also the technical colleges where you can earn a vocational certificate, an industry certification, and a lot of the technical colleges have articulation agreements, which means there's an agreement between the technical college and a college like SCF, the State College of Florida, with the Florida College System, where you can have classes that you've taken at the technical college that will also give you credit towards some classes for an associate's degree. So the 2+2 route to a bachelor's degree. So this means you would start your first 2 years at a public college in the Florida College System. In the Florida College System, we have open door admissions, which means you're accepted as long as you have your high school diploma or GED, so you don't need a certain GPA or a test score required. You would earn your Associates of Arts degree. This will take care of all of your general education requirements. So what's really cool is in the state of Florida, since we have a common course numbering system that numbers the courses, the first 2 years of any bachelor's degree in the state of Florida are the same at any Florida public college or university. So that means you can save some money sometimes by starting at the community college, since tuition and fees are usually a lot cheaper, and the coursework will be the same. Then after you have received your Associate of Arts degree, you would transfer to a Florida university or college to finish your last 2 years. So the state of Florida guarantees students who complete an AA degree at a Florida college admissions to a state university. You're not guaranteed admissions into a certain program, but you are guaranteed admissions to that university. And once you've completed it, your AA degree, you get to transfer and start as a junior. So they'll take your first 2 years of those general education requirements, and you'll start right away as a junior. And then you go on there at the university to earn your bachelor's degree. So you'll start as a junior again, and you start with classes in your major, since you have all those general education classes taken care of already in your AA degree from the Florida College System. And I like to tell students that even if they start at a community college and earn their AA and then transfer for their bachelor's degree, your bachelor's degree will not say, SCF / Harvard if you wanted to go to Harvard. It will just have the university's name. So like University of Florida, a bachelor's degree. It will not say if you started, at a Florida College System. So some students and even parents I've talked to don't know that. So it is just a little information for you to know that if you do the 2+2 route and start at a college in the Florida College System and then transfer on to get your bachelor's will just have that university that you attended. So just to recap, do your research. So keep a notebook or even a Word document with all the information that you gather so you know where to get it, and you don't have to look around the college websites again if you have a question and say, oh, I remembered I saw that somewhere. Find your perfect fit. So make sure you find the school and the degree that's right for you. So just because something is the right fit for your best friend doesn't mean that it's the right fit for you. And again, make sure that you're visiting those college campuses to make sure, because that's where you are going to be for a few years. And then remember, don't get senioritis. Keep up your grades and stay involved. And then prepare yourself for a big change, because college is very different, again, from high school. So be prepared to be more independent and try to make those changes while you are still in high school. So I'd like to thank you so much, and I know if you have any questions, we will be having the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. I'd be happy to answer those, so thank you.
Thank you, Liz, so much. It is so important to know, as you mentioned, that college is very different from high school, and being prepared really makes a world of difference, and ultimately being a successful student and graduating with your degree. So thank you for sharing that information. Now, for our audience, while some of you may be looking at a state college in Florida, some of you may also be looking at a four-year university. So our next guest will walk us through the steps you need to in order to get admitted into a four-year university in Florida. Amory Anaya is a native of Detroit, Michigan, and he's been living in Florida for the past 9 years, working with the University of Florida in the undergraduate admissions office since December of 2016. He is a lover of education. He attended the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, and the University of Miami for his undergrad. He is currently completing work towards his Juris Doctorate degree at FIU's College of Law. We are very honored to have you join us today, Amory, to learn about the process of applying for admissions at a university here in Florida. Welcome, Amory.
Thank you so much for that. Good afternoon, everyone. So what I'm going to do is talk to you all about the admissions process and give you some details regarding that. Again, if you have questions, definitely make note of those so that I can try to answer those after we're done. So admissions 101. There's two main things that colleges and universities look at in terms of admitting students, and that's going to be the holistic side and the academic side. So we're going to get into both of those, starting with the academic side. Now, colleges and universities look at your grades from 9th all the way to 12th. So there's no feeling out period. There's nothing like that. As soon as you get into high school, students should be working hard to make sure that their grades stay top-notch because, again, we're going to be looking at everything. So making sure that the courses that you take are going to help you in that academic review is very, very important. Now, the regular type of courses, most students in high school, they take just general courses. We would prefer that students take more advanced courses, which is going to be your honors, AP, IB, ACE, and dual enrollment. Now, with honors, AP, and IB, with AP, IB, and ACE, those are looked at a bit differently by some universities versus other universities. The University of Florida, for example, we give an additional point for AP, IB, and ACE credits, while we give half a point for honors credits. A school like FIU would give you a full point for honors, AP, IB, and ACE. So there are a bit of nuances in there regarding how universities actually evaluate those credits, but the common thread is that those credits are going to make your academic record more attractive to colleges and universities. So I'd urge students to take as many of those as you can, starting in 9th grade, going all the way up to your senior year. Now, dual enrollment, that's another one that's looked at a bit differently by some institutions versus other institutions. With the University of Florida, we actually look at it the same as AP, IB, and ACE. So we give you a full point if you do take dual enrollment. And by point, I mean essentially that your grade, when we're evaluating it, will go up. So let's say you get a B in IB history, we would actually count that as an A. Now, dual enrollment is actually college credit. So that's something that's going to follow you whether you start at a state university or one of the state colleges. It's something that's going to follow you directly into college and affect your college GPA. So that's something to keep in mind. Some students don't realize that, and then they slack off in those dual enrollment courses, and then they start at a university, and then their university GPA is at the level of their dual enrollment courses. So let's say you took one dual enrollment course and you got a B, then your general college GPA is going to start off at a 3.0. So just keep in mind that dual enrollment does follow you into college, so definitely take those credits seriously. And the exams, we're going to discuss the ACT and the SAT a little bit later on. Now, in terms of the courses that you take, the rigor of those courses does matter. So we do want you to challenge yourselves in high school because we want to make sure that you're going to be prepared for what you're going to experience in the college or university that you do choose. So there's a balancing act that does go in there because you want to take difficult classes, but obviously you don't want to fail difficult classes. So if you're really good in math, but you're not so good with the writing, then you may want to take, obviously, advanced level math classes at the AP level, but you may not want to take something that's at the AP level in terms of English if you're not sure that you can get good grades in there. So we want students to recognize their strengths and weaknesses and take challenging classes, but take challenging classes that will ensure that your overall GPA doesn't suffer once you're done with high school. Now, with your ACT and your SAT, it doesn't matter which of those exams that you do take, ACT or the SAT, we don't have a preference at the University of Florida. There's no preference really in the entire state university system. Most of the institutions in the state university system here in Florida do what's called super scoring. So with super scoring, what that means is that we combine your subsections and put those together to create a new score for you. So if you get a 20 in math the first time you take your ACT, you get a 19 the second time, we're going to look at that 20 when we essentially put together that new score for you. So because of super scoring, I always encourage students to try to take either an ACT or an SAT, or preferably both, in the 11th grade. If you take your exams in the 11th grade, you'll know what, if anything, you need to work on. Because the worst thing you can do is wait until your senior year, take an exam, do badly, and not have time to retake another exam before college or university deadlines come to pass. So definitely try to take your ACT or SAT in the 11th grade. Some students do better on one versus the other. Personally, I did a lot better on the ACT than the SAT. So some of you may be similar, some of you may be different, but it does behoove you to take both of those exams. Now, the exams, they test pretty much ways of thinking and ways of doing things. So the more that you practice, the more you'll recognize the different type of questions and prompts you'll see on these exams. So definitely lots of practice would be beneficial for students. The PSAT and the PLAN exam are two tests that could help to prepare you, but you can take tons of practice exams. You can sign up for a course. But what you do want to do is make sure that you do have some type of preparation for these exams before you take them, because they are a big part of the admissions process. Everything with some universities, it's more so based on the numbers in terms of your GPA and your test scores. So that's why these exams can be very important. Other universities, like the University of Florida, do look at pretty much the entire academic record, which gets us to the holistic portion. So with the holistic portion, what that means is that, as I said, we examine pretty much every facet of the student, in addition to the GPA and the test scores. So lots of students who apply to typically the University of Florida have very high GPAs and test scores. So a nice way that we can differentiate between students and find out who's a better fit for our institution is to look at the things that they've done in high school. So extracurricular activities, getting involved in student organizations, working while you're in high school, doing community service, winning honors, awards, participating in sports, things of that nature. We like to see that students can balance those extra activities along with taking challenging courses. So you definitely want to try to get involved, starting out as early as possible. So 9th grade, you can start doing stuff all the way up until you apply for colleges and universities. And you don't have to limit your involvement just to your school. Like I said, you can volunteer in your community. You can volunteer in your religious organization. So there's lots of different things that students can do to ensure that they stand out from the crowd. Now, with some universities, this is more important than other universities, being that not everyone looks at the holistic side as intensely as a University of Florida or Florida State. But you definitely want to, it doesn't hurt you to get involved in high school. It's going to prepare you for the types of activities and whatnot that you're going to experience in college. And again, depending on the university you apply to, then that could be the difference between getting in or not getting in. If you see a student who has pretty much two students who have very similar GPAs and test scores, and if one is extremely involved and still maintains that GPA and those test scores and the other isn't, it's going to, the pendulum essentially is going to swing towards the student who's more involved, because we see that that student can actually undertake more, that student can take on more activities and still be successful. So definitely try to build up that resume while you're in high school. Try to find opportunities to stand out in your organizations by being a leader. Keep a log or a journal, because that's something that you'll have to input on your college application. So you want to make sure that you have as much information to provide us as possible. And also be specific. We don't really know all of the acronyms that may be prevalent in your high school or in your community, so you definitely want to describe these activities that you're doing in these organizations that you are a part of, so we can get a better picture of you as a student. As I said, make sure that you tell us about you, with not just with your student involvement, but also with your personal statement. We don't do, I don't think any of the universities in Florida do in-person interviews. New College may, but I know that the University of Florida, Florida State, UCF, USF don't do interviews. So with your personal statement, that's a way to essentially allow us to get a picture of you and try to do that interview without actually doing the interview. So make sure that on that resume, on the essay, you try to paint a picture of yourself for us. Make sure that someone looks over it, because the worst thing that you can do is the worst thing you can do is have typos or things of that nature on something that could determine a big portion of your future. So definitely be clear with your resumes and your essays and things of that nature. Make sure that you answer the questions that we provide, and just try to, again, paint a picture of yourself so that we can evaluate properly what kind of candidate that you are. So just to recap, you want to make sure that your grades stay top-notch from your ninth all the way up until your senior year. If you haven't already, try to make sure that you take your ACT or SAT during your junior year, just to prepare for the senior year once that comes around. Make sure that you are involved. Make sure that you document all of those activities that you are involved in, and just be ready to submit your applications on time during your senior year. So I definitely want to thank you. Again, if you have any questions about the admissions process, things that we look at, anything of that nature, I'll be around afterwards to answer those questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Amory. We really appreciate this information. There are so many components that go into applying to a four-year university, so we truly appreciate you breaking down those components and making it easy to understand. I think if students plan early or start early and they plan accordingly and they prepare with all this information, everything else should fall into place. So thank you for sharing such wonderful information. Now, once you've been admitted to the college or university of choice, then you need to figure out a way to pay for it. So our next speaker will walk us through the financial aid process. Dr. Mansell is an Associate Director of Financial Aid at the University of Central Florida. We are very excited to have her. She is dedicated to assisting students and particularly passionate about higher education access. She truly enjoys speaking with students and their families about going to college, and through providing information to families, Dr. Mansell hopes to assist students with breaking barriers to higher education attainment. Dr. Mansell, thank you for being with us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Well, today I'm going to talk about the financial aid process, the types of aid available, potential financial aid roadblocks, meaning what are some things that could happen throughout the financial aid process that could possibly delay your process so that you're aware of them so that you can get through those roadblocks, and then managing your money once you get financial aid, which is a key component of being a successful student holistically. So some key financial aid terms. I always like to start by sharing information that can go with you a long way. So the first thing I like to talk about is the free application for federal student aid, also known as the FAFSA. It is the application that students must do to be considered for federally funded aid and often to be considered for state aid and institutional aid. So it's the first step in the financial aid process. Beyond that, we have terms that we utilize in financial aid, and I want to ensure that you're aware of those as well. The cost of attendance is the budget that your institution creates for you based on a variety of factors. If you're going to a state college or to a state university, your enrollment, your residency, and your housing status are the three factors that determine your cost of attendance. The expected family contribution, or the EFC, is the monetary amount that the federal government comes up with that your family can contribute to your education. And then often we talk about need-based aid versus non-need-based aid, and your need is determined by taking those two components that I just talked about, your cost of attendance and your expected family contribution, and you subtract the EFC from the COA to get the need. Each institution has developed what we call a priority filing date. A priority filing date is the date that each institution establishes that they want to receive your FAFSA results so that you can be considered from the maximum financial aid package. It doesn't necessarily mean that you'll get everything, but it does warrant maximum consideration. The type of financial aid no one ever likes to talk about are student loans, but there are some differences between the types of student loans available. There's the subsidized loan, which is need-based and interest does not accrue while you're in school, as well as the unsubsidized loan, which is not need-based, and almost all families are eligible for that type of aid. However, interest does begin accruing the moment that loan disperses. Financial aid is broken into two categories: gift aid, which is free money, money that does not have to be repaid or earned through work. I like to say free money is good money, so we try to get as much of that as possible. And there's also self-help aid, which comes in the form of student loans or student employment. The early FAFSA is the new FAFSA that has become available in October of each year. So the FAFSA became available for the 17-18 year in October of 2016, and that will be the same case for the 18-19 year. The FAFSA for the 18-19 year will become available on October 1st, 2017. And it will be using what the federal government calls prior year, meaning the tax information that you're using on the FAFSA dates back 2 years. So for the 2017-2018 FAFSA that families could start completing in October, they are actually using 2015 tax information. So the FAFSA must be completed each and every year in order to be considered for federal student aid, and you can do that electronically at FAFSA.gov. Or if needed, you can request a paper FAFSA by contacting the Federal Department of Education at 1-800-4FED-AID. Both students and parents need what we call an FSA ID. That's a Federal Student Aid ID. And that allows you to sign the FAFSA electronically and log into the FAFSA. And once we get that information, or the federal government gets that information, they use that information to determine the type of federal aid a student will be eligible for. So as I mentioned before, and this is pretty new, the FAFSA became available on October 1, and it uses 2015 tax information. When you're preparing to complete the FAFSA, you want to gather all the documents you may need, which include financial information, tax information for the tax year that's going to be applicable to the particular FAFSA that you're completing. You can complete the FAFSA on the web worksheet. That allows you to be able to write out some of the information that the online FAFSA is going to ask of you prior to actually doing that. But that's an optional step. If you don't have an FSA ID, you will need to apply for one because, again, both students and parents need an FSA ID for dependent students. And if you have more than one dependent child, you do not need more than one FSA ID. Choose how you're going to sign your FAFSA. You can either use the FSA ID and sign it electronically, which is what is recommended, or you can print a signature page and mail it in to the Department of Education. On the FAFSA, be sure to include all of the schools that you're interested in. And that's important because we're talking about that priority date that I mentioned before. You want each school that you're interested in to receive your FAFSA information by that institution's priority date. And then it's really important to know what those priority dates are. And I just wanted everyone to get an opportunity to see what the FAFSA webpage looks like so you can familiarize yourself with it. And so if you need to obtain an FSA ID, you can do so by going to FAFSA.gov and clicking on the link to get the FSA ID, and you must use your unique email address to do so. And it is a legally binding document that is essentially your electronic signature, so you want to make sure you keep that information safe. It's personally identifiable information. And this is what the page looks like to create the FSA ID. So, once you've completed the FAFSA, what does the money that you get from the information on the FAFSA help you pay for? So the cost of attendance includes educational expenses, and that is what federal financial aid, state financial aid, and institutional financial aid is there for. It's to help students with their educational expenses. And typically, your cost of attendance includes your tuition and fees, your books, room and board, transportation to and from school, and then personal expenses. And those are expected college costs. However, sometimes there are hidden costs, such as if a student chooses to do a study abroad experience, or if a student has specific wardrobe requirements for their major, needs a specific type of computer, or different types of supplies such as in art or architecture. And then there are times where there are additional fees for the courses that you're taking, such as lab fees, or if a student is over the number of credit hours required for degree completion, there is a point where there are excess hour fees charged. So it's just important for students to do the research to know what hidden costs might be out there that could impact the amount of funding available to them throughout each semester. So as I mentioned, there's gift aid and self-help aid. Gift aid comes in the form of grants and scholarships, and it's that free money that I said I like so much. Self-help aid is also available to help families pay for educational expenses, and that comes in the form of student loans as well as student employment such as work study, where students are able to get a job either on or off campus as a part of their financial aid package. So I wanted to talk a little bit about scholarships. Scholarships come from a variety of sources. Institutional scholarships are available to students and families. Often institutional scholarships are offered to students upon admission, but there are also processes for students to apply for scholarships throughout the year. So here at UCF, we have a scholarship search engine available to our students, and most institutions have something similar where students can go on to the financial aid website of that school and find out what scholarships are available to students. Additionally, there are community-based scholarships, scholarships that are offered from a variety of different donors in the community, such as churches or civic groups. It's important for students to make those community connections so that they can tap into that free money that is available. There are a variety of donors that are also giving out scholarships, and then scholarship searches, meaning being diligent in the scholarship search and using a variety of scholarship tools such as FastWeb or CapEx to help you to find out if there are any scholarships for which you are eligible. Bright Futures is probably the most common scholarship that we talk about here in the state of Florida, and it is available to students based on their academic performance in high school. Currently, the cost that a student or the amount a student gets per credit hour is dependent on the type of award that they're going to receive. The Florida Academic Scholar is $103 per credit hour, and the Florida Merit Scholar is $77 per credit hour. And the requirement for each of those scholarships to receive it is based on the student's academic performance in high school. So some scholarship search tips. Apply early, meaning if there is a deadline for that scholarship, you don't want to wait until the night before to get all your information together. Kind of can diminish the quality of your application. Apply often. Students get about 1 out of every 10 scholarships for which they apply. So don't get discouraged through the process. It's important to recognize that scholarship searching should be somewhat of a habit or even a second job for some students, so that you're doing it frequently and ensuring that you're increasing your likelihood of getting a scholarship. Getting involved is also important. As discussed when we were talking about getting into college, it looks good when the student is well-rounded. It also looks good for scholarships when a student is well-rounded and can show that beyond their academics, they are doing other things. Completing the FAFSA is another important component of applying for scholarships. A lot of scholarships, even if they are not need-based, require that the FAFSA is completed. So I often tell students and families that even if you don't think you're going to tap into federal funds, go ahead and complete a FAFSA so it's available to you. And creating a scholarship template and resume can help students to navigate the scholarship search process and do it as often as we are advising. So the scholarship template is essentially crafting 1 to 2 paragraphs that you will use for each and every scholarship for which you apply that outline who you are as a student, some of your civic involvement, some of your academic achievement, and then using those 2 paragraphs to frame what the donor is requesting of you and filling in the specific information for each donor. And then the scholarship resume, essentially, like I said earlier, scholarship donors like to see that students are actively involved. So the scholarship resume is just keeping a running list of all the different things that you're doing, whether it's volunteer hours or awards that you're receiving. It's easy to kind of have that stuff lose sight. So instead of trying to jog your memory each time you're doing an application, that scholarship resume is available for you to just plug that information into your essay. And then some scholarship search engines that we like to share with students are Chegg.com, scholarships.com, CapEx.com, FastWeb.com, and as I mentioned before, your school scholarship search listing is really a great place to start looking for scholarships. It's never too early to look for scholarships, and no scholarship is too small. Grants are available to families based on need and that expected family contribution that is derived when you submit the information on the FAFSA. Not all families are going to qualify for grants, but if you do qualify for a grant, these are some of the common grants that students may see in their financial aid package. The Pell Grant is a need-based grant based on a student's expected family contribution and their enrollment status. There are some grants that can be put with the Pell Grant to help a student get a larger financial aid package, and that's the SEOG grant, which is also a need-based grant given to students with the most need, and the Florida Student Assistant Grant, which is a state-funded grant given to students based on need. And the reason I put those 2 grants in this presentation is because I wanted to again stress the priority deadline. A student who is Pell eligible who files by the school's priority deadline will be considered for the Federal Student Educational Opportunity Grant and the Federal Student Assistant Grant. However, if a student files after a school's priority deadline and is still Pell eligible, they may not get consideration for those other grants that are available to them. So I just wanted to stress how grant funding could work given the priority deadline. Student loans, again, the type of aid no one really wants to speak of, are available to help students and families fund their education. I think it's important to inform students about student loans because being an informed borrower helps you to navigate the student loan process. Student loans must be repaid, and some loans, as I mentioned before, begin accruing interest once they are paid out. So free money is good money, so you want to secure as much free money as you can prior to considering student loans. Here's a chart. Student loans, the amount you can borrow varies by your academic classification. It starts off lesser for freshmen and increases gradually throughout the student's academic career. And I just wanted you to see that freshmen in their first semester, first year, can borrow $3,500 for the academic year in the subsidized loan if they have need, and then an additional $2,000. But the total that freshmen can borrow for the academic year is $5,500. So that's just for planning purposes for students and families to understand what is available to them. So I talked about some potential roadblocks at the beginning of the presentation. I wanted to share some things that can complicate the financial aid process. And one of those things is called verification. And verification is a process in which the financial aid office must cross-reference the information on the FAFSA with information that is being requested of the student and family. Typically, the tax information is given to the Office of Student Financial Aid to look at and determine if there is any need to make any changes on the FAFSA. Prior to the IRS data retrieval tool is currently not available to students and families and will not become available until October of this year. So I wanted to share that and reiterate the importance of using the correct tax year when completing the FAFSA, because it can increase the likelihood that you'll have to submit documentation to an office. If you're not using the correct tax year, then it can delay the process of your financial aid. There are some times when the FAFSA does not reflect a family situation, and the school has the authority to look at what we call special circumstances, such as loss of employment, death of a parent or spouse, unusual medical expenses, or if a student has been abused or abandoned by both parents. There are times where the school can make their own distinction based on these special circumstances. Each school has their own process, so if you fall into one of these categories or another category that you think may be a special circumstance, I encourage you to visit the school's website to find out what you would need to do for the institution for which you're interested. So some tips for maximizing your financial aid package: complete the FAFSA as early as possible each year. Create a budget for each semester and only borrow what you need. And apply for scholarships often. I told you guys I like that saying, free money is good money. So you don't want to lose your financial aid. Make sure you know your school's satisfactory academic progress policy. Each and every school participating in federal aid has a SAP policy. Know the eligibility requirements for the programs that are listed on your financial aid package, and also know your scholarship and grant renewal criteria. Keep in mind, federal loans and Pell Grants are for a specific time frame, so you want to ensure that you're monitoring your eligibility of loans and grants. And ask questions of your Office of Financial Aid in the term for which you have the questions, because there are some time limitations on how we can resolve financial aid issues and problems for students. Some budgeting tips: ensure that you create a budget each and every semester, and in doing that, determine your needs and wants. Take care of your needs first. Ensure that you establish a checking account and direct deposit at your institution. Be cautious of credit card usage. Before borrowing, make sure you understand your student loans, and I hope the information you received today helped you to start that process. Be a smart shopper when it comes to every aspect of your life, from apartments to books, clothes, food, or anything else you may need. And if possible, always save for a rainy day. There are things that come up, and they're unexpected, and having a little something put away helps to get you through that process. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Mansell. We really appreciate you taking the time to share all the options students have available to them to pay for college, and free money is good money. It's also so important to know that it's not just about getting the money, but keeping those awards with good grades and maximizing your budget. So it really makes a difference to plan and takes away some of that stress so that you can focus on being a college student. So thank you again, Dr. Mansell. This is actually the end of our presentation portion, but we would like to open up the floor for some questions. So please type your questions in the question box, and we will address them while we're live. Dr. Mansell and Amory and Liz, we have had some great questions coming in, so I'll take a few minutes, if you don't mind, to go over those. The first question, Liz, is actually for you. We had a student listening to the information regarding the 2+2 program, and they are currently a junior in high school, and they would like to know how the admissions process works in terms of being in high school and then applying for a college and then later on applying to a university. Is it all one application? Does it depend on the school? How does that admissions process work for the 2+2 program?
Well, that's a great question. So the 2+2 route, you would, when you're a junior or senior going into your senior year of high school, you would look at that college from the Florida college system like SCF, and you'd apply there. And again, we are all open admissions in the Florida college system, so as long as you receive your high school diploma or GED, you will be accepted. And then once you have finished all of your requirements for your AA, your Associate of the Arts degree, then you would go ahead and once you're getting ready to graduate from that degree, you could apply to the university that you're looking at. So it is two separate applications. You'd first in high school, your senior year, apply for the college system, so like a State College of Florida, and then after you're getting ready just to finish up probably about your last semester here, getting your AA, then you would go ahead and you would reach out and apply to those universities as a student going in to finish your degree, your bachelor's degree.
Thank you, Liz, and we are trickling in those questions. Dr. Mansell, we have a question, actually several questions regarding the FAFSA, so I'm going to try to summarize a couple for you. The first one related to the FAFSA application has to do with change in income. So what if there has been a significant change in income from the tax year used in the current FAFSA application? How do those changes play into applying for financial aid?
Thank you. Okay, so I talked about those special circumstances. That's one of them. So if the FAFSA does not reflect the family's current situation, each school has their own process that we call professional judgment. So the schools that you're interested in, you would want to contact that institution or go through their website to find out how you start the professional judgment process and what documentation would be required. You still complete the FAFSA using the tax year that the FAFSA is requesting. So in this case for 17-18, we are using 2015. But if 2015 is not an adequate reflection of your family's current situation, the school has the leverage to look at a variety of things and use that information to then update the FAFSA results and send that information to the federal government and get a new expected family contribution. The professional judgment process does not necessarily guarantee additional financial aid funding, but it does at least allow for the institution to take a second look at that family's particular situation.
Thank you for that information. And just to reiterate, when does a student need to start the FAFSA process? Junior year, senior year, earlier than that?
So the FAFSA becomes available in October of each year. It's normally going to be your senior year because you're doing the FAFSA for the upcoming academic year. So, for example, the FAFSA that became available in October of 2016 is for the 17-18 year. So depending on what institution you're going to, that year starts in fall 2017 and goes through summer 2018, or some schools, depending on how they're structured, it could start in summer of 2017 and go through the end of the spring term 2018. So it's really important to understand what's going on at your particular school, because there are times for summer admission where a student might have to do 2 FAFSA applications to get summer aid.
Thank you. We are getting lots of questions for FAFSA and learning a lot about financial aid. Dr. Mansell, if somebody's looking at going outside or out of state How are financial aid packages different or the same, and what should they expect from an out-of-state school? I realize this is probably outside of your area, but if you have any knowledge of what they should expect from an out-of-state school and what those financial aid packages may look like.
Sure. So the federal aid that a student is eligible for, such as the Pell Grant, if a student is Pell Grant eligible, they're Pell Grant eligible at any institution for which they apply. However, the change in the financial aid package would be based on what that institution has available to give to their students. Not all schools have the same amount of state aid available or institutional aid available. So that said, if a student is going out of state, it also depends on that student's high school academic performance. It might be possible for the student to receive a waiver of out-of-state fees at an out-of-state school if that school has the funding to do so. It might be possible for the student to receive scholarships from that institution if the school has funding to do so. It's really going to vary from school to school, and whether you're going to a private institution or a public out-of-state school, because there are some other additional requirements that public institutions have to abide by. I hope that answers the question.
Yes. I think that gives them an idea. For those students that are looking, we have some questions regarding out-of-state. And so, although I have to advocate for Florida institutions, we have such a great variety here. Amory, if you're available, we have a similar question related to students who are considering going out-of-state in regards to admissions. Any tips or anything you can share, similar or different from what they need to do in Florida?
Sure. Essentially, a lot of the out-of-state institutions, depending on the caliber of the institution, will look at pretty much all of the same things we're going to look at. The good thing about Florida, I also encourage students to stay in Florida, but the good thing about the state of Florida is that you have pretty much just about every single type of institution. You've got your very selective institution, you've got your big publics, you've got your private, you've got your HBCUs. So there's tons of different colleges and universities in the state and also outside the state, obviously. So it just depends on which of the universities that students are applying for. If a student is applying for a very selective university, I would say essentially you would want to do that application very similar to how you would do a University of Florida or a Florida State application. Focus on the extracurriculars, make sure you build your resume, make sure that you're involved. Obviously, your GPAs and your test scores are going to play a big part as well. So applying outside the state of Florida is very similar to applying inside, but students will want to look at the admissions rate of the institution and what the institution requires in terms of documents, materials, etc., in order to determine specifically what they want to submit. But I would say just make sure that your test scores are high, your GPAs are high, and that you're very involved and that your application is free from any errors, and also submit it on time.
Thank you, Amory. And while you're thinking about sort of incoming freshmen, we've had some questions related to students going into a university. What can they expect? And you can certainly tell us University of Florida as an example. What can they expect in terms of student-to-faculty ratio, any other student ratios that may make a difference in their decision, and then the average freshman class size?
Okay. Yeah, well, the University of Florida is a very large institution. In the state of Florida, we actually have, I believe, 3 of the top 10. You have UCF, FIU, and UF. And I think actually USF is in there as well as far as large universities in Florida. So even though universities are pretty large in the state, within the state university system, we do strive to make sure that student-to-faculty ratio does remain low. At the University of Florida, it's about 28-1, even though we have about 50,000 students. So we do try to make sure that class sizes are manageable. But pretty much if you're going to any large institution within Florida or outside of Florida, you will have large lecture halls. That's something that you really can't escape unless you go to a very, very small school. But if you're going to a large institution, that's something that you'll have to experience. The thing with lectures, though, is that each lecture does have a discussion component. So those discussions are just like regular classrooms where another professor or graduate assistant would break down the material from the lecture to make sure that you understand it. So, yeah, class sizes are going to, we're going to try to keep those discussion components small, but especially if students are going into health science-related fields like biology, chemistry, things of that nature, you will have those lecture halls there. And there were other components to that. I think I just answered one.
Yes, I believe student to faculty ratio, Amory.
Mm-hmm.
And I apologize, were you asking?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I thought that I only answered one part of your question. I addressed the student to faculty ratio portion, but I wasn't sure if there was more to that question.
Yeah, no, you got it. I think that addresses several of the questions coming in. And I wonder, Liz, if you have any tips or things to look for those students that are looking at maybe having a smaller class size experience?
Sure. So here I know at the State College of Florida, our faculty to student ratio is about 22 students per professor, which is nice because it is a smaller class size. I do say that it sometimes can help with the stress of coming, the big change like we talked about from high school to college. So just making sure, again, when you do your research to look at, see if you can find what the student to faculty ratio is, but all of our classes here on any of our SCF campuses are about 22 students per professor.
Great, so definitely options, sort of a wide variety of options in the state. Liz, if you don't mind sharing with us, some students are thinking about starting college early or maybe taking a semester off. Is it possible for students to begin during the spring semester, or do you always have to start in the fall?
That's a great question. So if you wanted to start in the spring semester because you haven't graduated, if you haven't graduated high school yet, that would be the opportunity for you to take those courses like dual enrollment, where you could take the college course but you're still in high school, so you're getting credit for your high school diploma as well as college credit. And then you don't have to start in the fall. You can start in the summer if you'd prefer to get a head start, or like I believe you said, you could, if you wanted to, maybe take the fall semester off and then start the spring semester after you graduated. You can definitely do that, but you do want to have your high school diploma or GED for the Florida college system in order to take classes towards a degree. But the best thing you can do if you wanted to start early in the spring semester of your senior year in high school is to look at those dual enrollment classes that are offered. And again, you can take those either on your high school campus, or if you really want to get that college experience, go ahead and take those dual enrollment courses at the college campus. So you can kind of get a feel for college life. But you could start then, or you could start summer once you have your diploma, take maybe a semester off and start in the spring, or most people really just like enjoying starting in the fall semester, take the summer off.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Dr. Mansell, we have some questions related to Bright Futures, and so you covered some information about FAS, or Florida Academic Scholar, Medallion Scholar, and the types of Bright Future scholarships. Do students need to complete the FAFSA in order to be eligible for the Bright Future Scholarship? Are the two connected at all, or is there a different application they need to submit?
That's a great question. The FAFSA is not required currently for Florida Bright Futures. However, the Florida Financial Aid application is required to be completed in the senior year, and a lot of guidance counselors actually do that during the school day with the students. It's a short application. It's nowhere near as in-depth as the FAFSA, but that application does have to be on file. Additionally, Bright Futures is not need-based. It's given to students solely based on their academic merit in high school, and there is a community service component as well, so there are some community service hours that need to be done. But no, the FAFSA is not required.
Thank you. And related to the FAFSA and some other Florida-specific programs, if students have Florida prepaid college plan, do they also have to complete the FAFSA? And again, do the two connect? How do the two connect or not connect?
They don't. The Florida prepaid program is essentially a college savings program that was purchased for the student, and the FAFSA is not required to tap into those funds. Each institution handles Florida prepaid a little bit differently in terms of how that is applied to the student's tuition. Here at UCF, it is handled by the Office of Student Accounts, and it is applied to the student's tuition debt prior to the fee payment deadline, as long as they receive that information from Florida Prepaid. And then depending on the type of plan you have, there might be some fees that aren't covered by Florida Prepaid, and those fees could be paid by way of financial aid if the student has a financial aid package, or by the student or family.
Thank you. And if the students are not pursuing Bright Futures or have the Florida Prepaid, what is your recommendation for high school students and possibly incoming freshmen and sophomore students getting a job and the amount of hours they should work to help pay for college?
I think that truly varies by student, and each student will know themselves better than I could know them or even their parents may know. I think that it's important for the student to know themselves. If you're working while in high school and you're able to manage that, that might be a good indication that you could potentially work during your freshman year. But I think it's also important to recognize that college and high school are not the same in terms of academic rigor. So the number of hours that a student works, it really varies by student. In the work-study program, students are unable to work more than 20 hours a week during times that school is in session. So that might be a good gauge for some students. Some students can manage 20 hours very easily, whereas others work about 10 hours a week with the work-study program, and that's what they can manage with their academic load. Your major should be considered when determining how much you're going to work and if you're going to work, and the requirements of that major, the rigor of that major, the time needed for special projects and so forth. So it's really a balancing act that the student is going to have to devise for themselves. So similarly to creating a budget, as I mentioned before, I would also encourage students to kind of take a look at what they're doing academically, create a schedule, try to figure out how much study time they're going to need, and determine if working is something that would be feasible for them while being in school. That said, I understand that we all have needs that need to be met, and those basic needs are incredibly important. So if a student must work, it's important for them to just carefully navigate that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's certainly a balancing act. Liz and Amory, actually, I'll start with you. I'll go back to the admissions piece. We have a couple of students that will actually be graduating high school with 30-plus credit hours, and they are wondering if that would help increase their chances of being accepted into a place like the University of Florida. Are they looked at under a different criteria? How does that work?
Well, the way that we examine dual enrollment is pretty much in the same way we look at honors, AP, IB, and those type of courses. So it would help them graduate from the University of Florida quicker. It may give them a slight edge if they've done very well in those courses and they're also well involved in the community with community service and things of that nature. But if a student has 30 dual enrollment credits and someone else is taking the equivalent of that in AP or IB classes, we do look at those very similarly. So I would say that the benefit to those courses is that it's going to save students money, being that the cost for a dual enrollment class is going to be cheaper than the cost of a college course. It's going to save the student time, being that they'll be able to graduate in less time from a four-year university. But we wouldn't necessarily give it too much weight in terms of the admissions division. But it's something that's going to actually benefit the student themselves, so I would always recommend doing dual enrollment.
Absolutely, and it's interesting because lots of our students taking college courses are also in the 16, 17 age bracket, and so related to that, we've had some questions about whether or not, and Liz, feel free to jump in with your recommendation as well, but whether or not being 16 or 17 and not 18 years old makes a difference in their application or them being on campus, and anything like that. Are there specific or additional requirements they should be completing or looking into if they're under the age of 18?
Well, with the University of Florida, not really, honestly. It's going to be a little bit different, being that they won't be of legal age to do a lot of the things that you can do in a place like Gainesville. But as far as if a student graduates early, that's something that we'd want to know why, essentially. So there could be circumstances that would benefit the student in terms of the admissions process. But I would say it's not really going to prohibit them from doing much on campus. But in terms of social activities, things of that nature, it would definitely affect their college experience going up to campus being that young.
Absolutely. And Liz, do you have any insight or additions to anything students might consider if they're under the age of 18?
Sure. So the only thing I would make sure that they know is that you are going to be on a college campus. So especially like someone from the Florida college system, like a community college like State College of Florida or State College, you have to know that you're going to be on there with people from every age. So you could be sitting in a class or involved in a club where you could have someone who is closer to your age, maybe at 18. You can have some people who are maybe in their 20s who are still going through school. We could also have people who may be your parents' age or older who are coming back to school. So you just want to know that it's not going to be like high school where everyone in the class is about your same age. You will have people from all walks of life coming back to college, especially if you go to a college in the Florida college system. So just know that you will have that, especially if you decide to take, we see that a lot here at SDF in the evening classes, but it is great too because you get a really good insight from my personal experience of being in college, and I took a lot of night classes because I worked. I loved being able to be in classes with people from all different ages and seeing their insights and how they were either coming back to school or they knew what they were studying and seeing their passions. So just know that if you are under 18, there's really nothing that's going to prohibit you, that you wouldn't be able to do on the college campus, but just know and expect that it is going to be very different from high school, and you could be sitting in a class where someone is about your age and someone could be your parents' or your grandparents' age.
Very true. So you're not just learning from the faculty, but learning from your classmates as well. Thank you, Liz. I think we have lots of questions from students regarding dual enrollment and actually completing potentially their AA degree with high school graduation, which to me, you are on the right track if you're doing that. And oh my, I don't think I was thinking about college that soon. But Amory, if a student does have their AA degree, and you may have mentioned this, but just to confirm for those questions, are they applying typically to a university as a transfer student or as a freshman student?
There's something in the state university system called FTIC, First Time in College. So even though technically they would be at a junior level, we would consider them as being an FTIC. So we would treat them as though they are a freshman in terms of the application, meaning that they would still need to submit their ACT, SAT, and things of that nature if they have their associates. However, this isn't true with all of the state universities, but with the University of Florida, we can evaluate students who have a 60 credits or their associates as a transfer as well. So some institutions would essentially just evaluate them as an FTIC. Some of them can evaluate them as a pure transfer, meaning that they wouldn't need the ACT or the SAT. But that's something that students should check with directly with the institution that they're applying for.
Thank you, and we're going to just go over just a couple more questions, Dr. Mansell. I wanted to ask you, there were some questions that came in if you were talking about working as a student. If the student is interested in learning more about work-study programs, is there typically an office on campus they should be connecting with, and when does that typically happen if they have a work-study award?
Great question. Work-study is often a part of the original financial aid package. Work-study is a need-based program, so when I discuss the cost of attendance minus the expected family contribution, you have to have that need available to be considered for work-study. It's also a limited resource program, so going back to filing by your institution's priority date to be considered for work-study. Many schools, because of the limited resources, are only able to award work-study to a certain segment of the population. However, I would connect with the Office of Student Financial Assistance at the institutions that you're interested in to see if work-study is an option for you. The other thing is, just because it's not in your original package, it does not necessarily mean that you absolutely positively can't get it. So making that connection with the Office of Student Financial Assistance and finding out if there's additional funding available and if you particularly qualify is the first step. The other thing is work-study gives you that award in your financial aid package, but it does not necessarily find you a job. So finding a job is the student's responsibility, and each institution does that differently. Here at UCF, we have a database called Job Connection, and that database lists all the various work-study jobs available on campus. Most work-study jobs are on campus, but some schools do have a community service component of work-study where students might go out into schools or another part of the community, maybe a library, to work as a part of their financial aid package.
Very good. Thank you for sharing that. So again, all about preparing and starting early. Liz, if I can circle back to you, this is really in relation to selecting the right college and selecting the right major. We have a student who's wondering, what if I don't like my choice for a college after my first year? What are my options
So that's a great question, especially, trying to figure out which college is best for you, and also, if your major is what you really want to be, or I had the problem where I started with one major and ended up in something totally different. So you're not going to know until you've really done that. But if you do a lot of good research and just making sure you really, like I said, visit those college campuses, if you can, have a stay, maybe you have some friends who go to that college and you can maybe stay overnight with them and just see what it's like, see if that is the right atmosphere where you'd like to be. But if you didn't enjoy your first year, then I would just tell you to start again with your research. Maybe look at ones that maybe you thought, oh, I'm not sure if this was really my first choice, but I kind of like this college a little bit better, so let me go back and see that. And then you just have to see how their admissions requirements, because then you would be a transfer student. So you want to look at that because you would no longer be an FTIC a first time in college because you already attended college. But again, just making sure you do that research, looking on their websites, going to the colleges, any information sessions maybe they may have, or open houses, and just going there and getting that feel of the atmosphere, because you want to like where you're going to be, especially if you're going somewhere for those 4 years or longer. You want to make sure, again, it's the right fit for you. So that's why I always tell students, too, just because your best friend of all these years that you've had, one school is their favorite and that's where they'd like to go, doesn't mean that that is the right fit of where you'd like to be. And then as far as majors, if you start in one major and then say, I don't really like this, here, like I said, at the State College of Florida, we do have the Career Resource Center here. So we are able to help students maybe take some of those tests to see maybe what their interests are and what possible career paths they can go on. But I tell students, don't give up. You will find your way. My personal story is that I've started many different things, and I have changed majors while I was in college. I wanted to be 20 different things, asked my mom when I was in high school, and I'm something totally different now, but I love it. And just know that even if you come out of college and you're not quite sure, you will find your way. So just making sure, again, just do your research and see and try to get those experiences, those personal experiences.
Thank you, Liz. And as part of that transition from high school to college to a university, if a student is in high school and they begin the dual enrollment at a state college and they decide to stay at the state college, will they need to submit test scores, all of that information, even though it's not required?
No, so it would be the same admissions process. Here at State College of Florida, if you are participating in the dual enrollment program here, it's a different application when you're in high school. It's a paper application that you submit, and then you would have to reapply, not for the dual enrollment, but you'd have to apply as a college student, so as a first-time in college student, and you would do the general application that everyone does, but we would not require any test scores, the same as anyone else. The test scores are only required if you are non-exempt, and we would take the ACT, SAT, or you could take the PERT score, the PERT test, which is offered for free here at the State College of Florida, and that's more for advising purposes to put you in the correct math or English classes, but it is not what you need for your to be accepted. So you would have to most likely do a separate application for the general college application, but we would not ask for test scores just because you were a former dual enrollment student.
That makes sense. Thank you very much. I'm going to do one last question. Dr. Mansell, if you don't mind, we are getting lots of really good questions here.
Sure.
And and then we'll wrap up. This is actually related to a question that came in for raise.me as a website, and the student is asking whether or not that website is a viable or a legitimate website to search for scholarships. And then related to that, to reiterate, should students ever pay or consider paying any type of service for FAFSA or completing the financial aid process, or pay any type of fee for anything related to financial aid?
Absolutely not. I always encourage students to not pay for completing the FAFSA. The first word in FAFSA is free, so the federal government intends for that to be a free application. There are some websites out there that if you go to those websites, they charge a fee. Some of the fees are nominal, maybe $19.99. I've heard of companies who charge families up to $1,000 or more to complete the FAFSA, and that's not necessary. If a student or family is having a challenge with completing the FAFSA, then what they should do is go to one of the local schools and see if that Office of Student Financial Aid is willing to sit down and assist you with completing the FAFSA. There are also a variety of events that often take place throughout different community-based organizations. Here in Florida, we have College Goals Sunday that takes place before the FAFSA becomes available to help students, right when the FAFSA becomes available to help students and families with completing the FAFSA. So there are a variety of free ways that students and families can get assistance with completing the FAFSA. If anyone is guaranteeing you scholarships or additional grant money, I would venture to say that that guarantee makes me a bit uncomfortable, because there really isn't much someone can do to alter the methodology the federal government utilizes to determine federal eligibility. So now when it comes to the scholarship search, similarly, I advise that students do not pay for the scholarship search. I am not very familiar with RaiseMe. I do know that they want students to go through a process in order to start the scholarship search. If there's a fee associated with RaiseMe, I would be a bit skeptical of that. Also, if anyone is asking for your personally identifiable information, bank information, social security number, or anything like that, I would also be a little bit skeptical of that as well.
I wanted to kind of chime in on that one, because at the University of Florida, we do a little bit of RaiseMe. It's more of a school-specific thing, so every university doesn't participate in the program. But if a university is participating in it, pretty much the funds, from what I understand, the university itself is providing the scholarship funding, and it's being matched by that agency. So it's not for every university, but if you see a university that is participating in it, then that's something that you can follow up with. I know that FIU is a very big proponent of that. We just started it at the University of Florida, so we haven't done it too much, but yeah, it's a growing program.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
No problem.
Yeah, very good information to know. So thank you again for taking the time. We do want to invite you. We continue to get lots of some specific and some general financial aid questions. We do have a hands-on workshop for specifically the FAFSA next week, April 12th at 3 o'clock Eastern Time. So if you'd like to join us for that, you are more than welcome to sign up. You can sign up at floridashines.org, and we will have someone walking you through the actual FAFSA form and what it looks like and how to fill it out, so we can certainly take additional questions there. In addition to financial aid, there were questions regarding Bright Futures. You can learn about Bright Futures on floridashines.org. Florida Shines actually connects with the Bright Futures office and offers a Bright Futures evaluation. So if you're a student and you have your student ID and your school information, you can log in and see how eligible or not eligible, how close or how far you are from being eligible for the different types of scholarships. There's information about what the scholarships are and how you can qualify for them. So I'd encourage you to try that, and then email us if you have questions about your evaluation. We are going to take your questions until the end, and then we are going to share some with the experts and get you the information and follow up with you via email. So if your question was not addressed live tonight, we will address it via email. So look for an email with additional information. I hope you can join us next week during the FAFSA workshop. And before I wrap up, I once again would like to thank our speakers for taking the time to share their experience and their expertise today. And I'd also like to thank our event sponsors, the Florida Virtual Campus, Kaltura, and Cooter, as well as ACT. They really made this event possible for you. As a reminder, you will receive a follow-up email with a survey. If you found this helpful, let us know so we can continue to offer this for you. And all presentations and materials will be shared on floridashines.org. So if you missed any part of this presentation, you will be able to access it next week on floridashines.org. You can email us at collegenight@flvc.org if you have any additional questions, or send us your questions via Twitter at FLShines. So thank you again for your participation tonight, and enjoy the rest of the evening.